2. Sea Journey. At last the great day arrived. Charles Blomfield discovered that his quarters for the journey were to be a large open cabin, in which there were 20 hammocks for the single young men. But Charles did not take long to become acquainted with the other youths, some of whom, like William Hazard, were to be close and long-life friends. One of the young men in his cabin, Robert Smith, filled in the slow hours aboard the ship by writing a long letter to his father in England. We were towed out of the East India Docks on Saturday the 1st, about 9 a.m. amidst the great cheering from a concourse of people who had assembled to witness the departure. We went smoothly down the Thames, and although the day was rather dull and threatening rain, yet we had a beautiful view of the surrounding scenery as we passed. We arrived at Gravesend, cast anchor, there to undergo the inspection of the Government Commission agents. We all lined up on the poop and had to pass one by one, showing our contract tickets, which constituted the government inspection of the passengers. The ship had to undergo a search by these gentlemen, and as there was a great deal of luggage lying in among the tables and seats, in a sort of topsy-turvy fashion, they concluded that she had too much cargo on board, and some of it must come off and be sent by another vessel. This created a great deal of discontent among the passengers, as everyone was afraid of losing some of their belongings for a time. However, it was getting dark, and nothing could be done that night, so we amused ourselves a little with music of various kinds until bedtime, and then retired for the night. About 7 a.m. I was awakened by the noise of the passengers running to and fro, shouting in all of the tones about their luggage. A lighter was alongside, and the men of the ship, who were already actively putting off some of the cargo. While I was going on, I went to the breakfast, and at 11 a.m. went to the divine service, which was well attended, hearing a very good sermon. I could scarcely realize that it was the Sabbath, seeing some collected in a group in one part of the ship praising God, and in another part of the ship men busy discharging cargo in a very unbecoming manner, tearing and swearing at their work. So you may guess what sort of Sabbath we had for the first, very different from what you see in Scotland, but appears to concord with the feelings of the English. I judge they can be praying very earnestly at one time, and immediately after be singing and whistling in all various tunes of existence. I almost forgot, we even had vendors of apples and nuts from Gravesend, pressing the passengers to purchase from them, and I have no doubt they did good stoke of business, although it was a Sunday. However the day was spent, in the evening we formed into groups, singing hymns and church music, and then went to bed. I slept tolerably well, getting up next morning, Monday, at 7 a.m. After a wash and a stroll on the deck, there was breakfast. Then orders were given out that we would get our weekly rations served out after breakfast, which caused a great hubbub. You must first know there are two kinds of passengers, namely 200 nonconformists, and the others, composed of any persons sent by the shipbrokers to fill up. Consequently, we had two scales of rations, one inferior to the other. The ship was going to serve us all on the inferior side, which we resented. Fortunately, the government agent was on board the second time, so 10 of us went to him and presented our contract tickets and ventilated our grievances. He immediately gave orders that we were to get no less than what was on our tickets, whatever more. So we had to all show our tickets before we got our rations. Consequently, we were fed at one pitch, while the other party were fed at one much less. However, we got matters corrected and spent the rest of the day feeling rather idle and discontented, everyone complaining at being kept so long and anxiously inquiring when we were going to start. Many reports were made, some that we're going to start immediately, some that we were going to start 2 or 3 days hence, while others were that the ship was condemned and that we would be required to go back to London and join another. However, we were a little pacified when we were informed by the mate that we would start early the next morning. At this stage, everyone drew towards this evening's amusement of various sorts. Music was struck up, dancing was entered into with great spirits. Gradually they retired to rest, and by 10 o'clock most of them were in the arms of Morpheus. I myself remained on deck till near 12 o'clock, then went to bed and slept well till 6 a.m., when I was awakened by a tremendous cheering of those who had got up before me. I hurried on deck along with many others in shirt and trousers to join the crowd in the cheering, as we were actually leaving the place, which seemed a release to our detention of 3 days and 3 nights. The tug came alongside, lines were made fast, and the impatient paddles, after a hesitating splash or two, moved steadily on. The 3 days' familiarized scenery gradually glided away. We were no sooner off than we were proceeding with a moderate speed down the long avenue of the ships, stretching towards the sea. Looking around us as we ploughed the centre of the river, what a fine view we obtained of surrounding scenery. Although the country on both sides was fairly flat and comparatively uninteresting, it was not without charm, however, and very fitting for the English landscape. Rich alluvial plains on either side stretched far around, and although the river was very wide and the land very distant from us, yet we could easily discern the fine hedgerows and the belts of planting, with here and there an elegant mansion, or a snug little farmhouse beautifully studded round with clumps of trees, and on every elevated and prominent part we could see the windmills busily at work. The river now grew so wide that we could scarcely discern anything at all. The passengers left off looking at the land. Their attention now turned in amusement towards the sailors, who were spreading the sails, singing their merry songs as they did so, which was something new to those of us who had never been to sea. Our tug was about to leave us. The darkness was setting in, so the passengers were gradually going below and turning towards this evening's amusement. We had a great deal of music in the evening so far, but tonight a few of the young men had a meeting for the purpose of forming a class for the mutual improvement, and it was decided that we shall have meetings each Tuesday and Thursday evening at 7:30 p.m. Our first subject for discussion is to be, who are the heroes of today? Of the day.